In October 1822, a ship called the Honduras Packet left the gray, foggy docks of London. On board were 70 men, women, and children. They weren't just passengers, they were pioneers. They were sailing to a place called Poyais. They had seen the maps, they had read the guidebooks, they knew exactly where they were going. A tropical paradise in Central America, a land where the rivers were filled with gold, the soil produced 3 harvests a year without tilling, and the capital city, St. Joseph, boasted a domed cathedral, a bank, and, unbelievably, an opera house. They sailed for 2 months. They reached the coordinates. They scanned the coastline for the opera house. They looked for the harbor. There was nothing. No city, no port, no people. Just a malaria-infested swamp and the screaming of jungle monkeys. Poyais didn't exist. This is the story of Gregor MacGregor, the man who didn't just forge a check, he forged a nation, and he got away with it. To understand how you sell a fake country, you first have to understand the customer. The year is 2020. The Napoleonic Wars are over. Britain is victorious, but it is bored, and more importantly, it is broke. Interest rates on British government bonds, consols, had crashed to 3%. If you were a retired major or a widow living on interest, you were starving. You needed yield. And where was the yield? South America. The Spanish Empire was collapsing. Simón Bolívar was liberating countries left and right. Colombia, Chile, Peru, these were the Bitcoin of the 1920s, exotic, revolutionary, and offering 6% returns. The British public didn't know where these places were on a map, but they knew they wanted in. Into this fever dream steps Gregor MacGregor. He looked the part. He was a Scottish aristocrat, a former general in the Venezuelan army, and, crucially, he was married to Simón Bolívar's cousin. He walked into the drawing rooms of London wearing a dazzling uniform with the Green Cross medal on his chest. He wasn't just a soldier, he was royalty. He announced that the native king of the Mosquito Coast, a real person, by the way, had granted him a massive territory. MacGregor wasn't just a landlord, he was the cazique. That's a native word for prince. He was the sovereign prince of the independent state of Poyais. Now, a normal con man sells you a bridge. MacGregor sold the concept of civilization. He knew that to make the lie real, he needed paperwork, mountains of it. He opened a legation of Poyais in a mansion in London. He hired staff. He issued official decrees. But his masterpiece was a book, Sketch of the Mosquito Shore, written by a Captain Thomas Strangeways. Spoiler alert, Captain Strangeways didn't exist. MacGregor wrote the book himself, and it is a masterclass in plagiarism and fantasy. The book described Poyais in microscopic detail. It listed the fish you could catch. It described the architecture of the royal palace. It claimed the natives were fiercely pro-British. It was the Wikipedia page for a country that wasn't there. And because it was in print, people believed it. Once the belief was there, the trap was sprung. MacGregor went to the City of London and issued a government bond, a £200,000 loan secured by the revenues of Poyais. Think about that. He borrowed millions in today's money, secured by the tax revenue of a country that had 0 citizens, and the respectable banking firm of Sir John Perring underwrote it. The bonds sold out. MacGregor was rich, but money wasn't enough. He needed subjects. He targeted the Scots. He played on their desperation. He told the Highlanders that Poyais was a new Caledonia, a place where they could be free of the English. He sold them land for pennies an acre. He sold them titles. Cobblers became Knights of the Green Cross. But the cruelest trick? the currency exchange. Before the ship sailed, MacGregor told the settlers, British pounds won't be accepted in the advanced economy of St. Joseph. You must exchange your life savings for Poyaisian hard dollars. He took their gold. He gave them printed paper that wasn't worth the ink it was stamped with, and then he put them on the boats. 2 ships, the Honduras packet and the Kennersley Castle. 250 people, men, women, children, a doctor, a banker. They sailed across the Atlantic, singing songs about the cazique. They toasted him at dinner. They arrived at the mouth of the Black River. They dropped anchor. They looked at the maps. Here is the port, the map said. They looked at the shore. Jungle, sand, mosquitoes. They assumed the captain had made a mistake. This can't be it, they said. The opera house must be upriver. They sent a landing party. They found 2 American hermits living in a hut. The hermits looked at them and said, St. Joseph? There is no St. Joseph. You're in the middle of nowhere. The captain of the first ship, realizing he wasn't going to get paid, dumped the passengers on the beach and sailed away. Then the second ship arrived. The captain dumped his passengers too. Now there are 250 Scots stranded on a sandbar in the rainy season. The malaria hit first, then yellow fever. They had no shelter. They had no food. They had crates of Poyaisian dollars and ball gowns for the governor's ball, but they didn't have shovels or quinine. The camp turned into a graveyard. Dr. James Douglas, the expedition doctor, watched entire families die in their tents. The lieutenant governor MacGregor had appointed. He vanished. Suicide became common. They were dying at a rate higher than soldiers in the Napoleonic Wars. It was a humanitarian catastrophe. Word finally drifted up the coast to Belize, British Honduras. General Edward Codd, the governor there, couldn't believe the reports. He sent a schooner to investigate. The rescue crew found walking skeletons. They evacuated the survivors to Belize City. General Codd summoned the native king, George Frederick. The king was baffled. He said, I gave MacGregor a permit to chop wood. I didn't give him a kingdom. He revoked the grant immediately. 50 survivors, that's all that was left of the 250, limped back to London. You would think the game was up. You would think MacGregor would be hanging from a noose at Newgate Prison. You would be wrong. MacGregor didn't run. He attacked. He went to the newspapers and claimed that the settlers were the problem. He said they were drunkards and incompetents who had ruined his beautiful colony. He claimed the merchants in Belize were jealous of Poyais and had sabotaged the project. And people believed him. The bondholders were so desperate to save their investment that they sided with the con man against the victims. MacGregor was actually planning a 3rd ship when the heat finally got too high. He packed his bags and moved to Paris. And what did he do in Paris? He did it again. He launched Nouvelle Neustrie. Same map, different language. He tried to sell the same swamp to the French. But the French police were less forgiving than the British. They arrested him. He spent months in La Force prison. But at his trial in 1826, he was acquitted. He argued that he was the victim of his staff's overenthusiasm. He walked out of court a free man. He eventually returned to Venezuela in 1839. His wife had died. He was broke. He petitioned the Venezuelan government for a pension based on his service in the War of Independence. And they gave it to him. Gregor MacGregor, the man who sent hundreds to their deaths and stole millions, didn't die in a cell. He died in a general's bed in Caracas in 1845. He was buried with full military honors in the cathedral, celebrated as a hero of liberty. Why did it work? Because MacGregor didn't sell a product. He sold a dream. He sold the idea that there was a shortcut to paradise, a place where the rules of economics didn't apply. We like to think we are smarter today, but look at the crypto scams. Look at the startup frauds. The map of Poyais is still being drawn. The only difference is, now it's digital.